Glory to Ukraine, glory to brave Ukrainian army. Ukraine stands. Ukraine is fighting against Russia, terrorist state, against terrorists, number one, in the world, for the democracy in the whole world. Today, uh, despite of a red alarm, and at the moment there are a lot of shaheds over the territory of Ukraine, over the cities of Ukraine, and even in my region. In part of my region, there is already alarm, air raid alarm. Despite that, I am still alive, and I am in my garden, and I want to show you how beautiful my garden is during the spring and during all the springs, but of course during current spring, during current March. Please forgive me for my voice because recently I have visited our ski resort Bukovel, and after that I went back home with COVID. So I am in process or in progress with COVID, and luckily I think the hardest part is behind, and I am in the process of recovery, and I decided to go outside because even with the temperature, with the fever, with high temperature or middle temperature, it's much more comfortable to be outside. It's much more comfortable to breathe, to just to feel much more alive and to feel much more comfortable when you are outside and not the inside. And especially when such beauty is outside, when such beauty is in the garden, is blooming in the whole its to whole its extent. And of course, I want to show you this beauty and tell you about some of the plants, some of the flowers I have, and I receive a lot of pleasure while looking at them. And till this time, and as of now, you can see crocus pickwick or indigo striped. Here in Ukraine, it's much more popular to name it pickwick, but I think it's the same popular to name it, to call it king of stripe. Not sure how you call it in your country. Please leave a comment, please write. What is your favorite name for this crocus? But for this one, this variety, because there are a lot of varieties of crocuses, of course. And this is one of my favorite. Why? Because of its very interesting composition, yeah, a very interesting combination of the stripes and how it is combined from perspective of color, and it is very large flowered, and especially if you plant it or them, these crocuses as a group, as for example here on your screen, not one somewhere and another in a distance, but as a group, one near another, and this view will be much more spectacular and much more nicer as of me. But let's go further. Let's go to the next beauties, and of course there will be interesting, more interesting, and not so interesting. But yeah, I must admit that all the spring beauties, all the early spring beauties, are interesting for me in from different aspects, but they are more still beautiful. Another variety of crocus, but I don't know, I don't remember its name. Or his name, I'm not sure crocus whether this is he or it. It's much more earlier blooming, and it's at the stage of ending his bloom, or yeah. And another variety, another first bloom, spring bloom, and it's a very it's usual flower for our Carpathian mountains, for our Carpathian forests, and of course there are a lot of them in the forest, and the bloom is spectacular. And I want to show you more beauties, and among them will be also very spectacular, like this one, Hyonodoxa. Not sure, I think it's correct correct name in English because, yeah, we call it Hyonodoxa, Xyonodoxa maybe, and it is very, very popular here. And there are a lot of, not maybe countless, of course, but pretty lot of varieties, and they differ in color, they differ in size, they differ in nature of bloom. For example, some of varieties they bloom in clusters, other they bloom one flower per each plant. And this one, as you can see, it's very rich, it's very generous, and yeah. Another example when it is very, very practical, and it's a very, very good idea to plant such flowers, such yeah. Such plants in a group, not separately one from another. The color is very tender, light lavender, light lilac, light violet, and at the beginning of the blooming it is more intensely lilac, but during the blooming it becomes more lighter and lighter, and at the end of the blooming it will be almost white creamy, but still with shades of lilac or lavender color. Very, very early spring bloom, spring flower, and I would definitely recommend it to you if you are interested in this early spring flowers, in early spring plants. It's very, as you can see, it's very graceful, very nice, very neat, and it's very generous, especially if you plant a bunch of them and not a couple of them. Bees admire this flower, a bumblebee admire this flower, and of course different insects except bees and bumblebee. But people as well admire this flower, and I especially admire this one because it's very interesting and very rich in bloom. A couple more, some Stila type of variety, maybe Stila Mishchenko or maybe Pushkinia, not sure, but very interesting as well. And of course, it could be much more interesting when it will be divided and there will be more plants, and group will be much more richer, right? Uh, some of the flowers, as you can see, or as you can see, they are only coming out of the ground, and some of them they are already at the peak of their blooming, and they are very, very nice looking. I will try to show you this Sila variety much more closer, and you can see how interesting it is colored. The main color is white, very snowy white, and each of the petal it has this blue, dark blue, or intense blue stripe in the middle of the petal, and this coloring, this combination of color, it's very, very interesting and very, of course, nice looking. And there will be more, there will be some white variety, there will be here also some white variety. They could be bigger in size, smaller in size, or larger in size, smaller in size, different combinations and different look as result. And also I want to demonstrate you how this Xyonodoxa or Hyonodoxa, how it is starting to bloom, and this is also very interesting how it looks like when it is only at the starting point of her bloom, and then she opens more and more, and she grows taller, she grows higher during the bloom, and not only about flowers but also about branches where flowers stay. Yeah. And also I want to show you another beauty, Helleborus. I think this is familiar to you. This name is familiar to you, but I need to take a look and where I could step securely and not to damage other flowers. So Helleborus, it has a couple of names here in Ukraine, and I am not sure whether in your country you also call it different names. If yes, please also leave a comment and write how do you call this flower, this variety. Very interesting. Yeah, it will be very interesting and very useful for me. There are a lot of varieties here in Ukraine, and this flower, this plant, it is very, very popular here. Why? Because it is very simple. It is very, very easy in in caring, very easy to grow. It's not maybe so delicate as other plants. It could not be eaten by different ground habitats like with tulips or crocuses or other bulbs which are damaged by different habitats of from under the ground. So this plant, it is very, very stable, very popular. And why it is popular? Because it could even bloom above the snow. There were years when there was snow and this flower was blooming. And of course, this was very interesting and very spectacular. There are different colors of this flower, of this plant, namely. They could be a light green, as you can see on your right. They could be much more intense and deep violet, as you can see on your left. But all of them looking very nice, and they have such characteristic that at the to the end of their life, of their bloom, they become light greenish white. So even if now this left one is in dark color, it will become very similar to this right one. Yeah, and they are looking very, very interesting, and they could be simple or single flowered. They could be double flowered. I will demonstrate this in a moment. And my voice already started to be not so stable because I need some water, and I have not taken it with me for this walk, so I may put some music in between my words. So I wanted to demonstrate you one more variety of this Helleborus plant, of this Helleborus flower, and you can see how interestingly colored it is. On the outer petals, the color is much more lighter, much more greenish, and in the inner petals, it's much more darker, much more interesting. And in addition, it is dotted, and I think this is some from the double Allen. There is a line or series of such Helleborus called double Allen, and they could be yellow, green, and in other colors. And you could see how interesting it is looking, and how spectacular it is looking. And here you could see that flower becomes more lighter with the life of the flower, right? At the beginning, it's much more intensely colored, and during the flowering life, during the blooming life, it becomes much more lighter. So yeah, I need to finish because it's very hard to talk. Thank you for listening. Thank you for any activity under the video. Till the next video, and bye.